Hello, you beautiful legends, and welcome to another episode of Ben and Joel Reviews. I'm Ben.
And I'm Joel.
And this is the podcast where we discuss movies, TV shows, and theatre.
And whatever else we want.
So please, sit back, relax, and let's dive in.
How about yourself?
I'm not too bad. Weather's been very weird recently.
Yeah, it's hit and miss. Sunny days and rainy days.
Yeah, a couple of days ago the rain was awful.
Yeah, did you see the hail?
I did.
It was not good.
Thankfully, I was in the comfort of my own room.
See, this is fascinating stuff. I thought I had a leak in the roof because it was that intense on the guttering. I was like, there's a leak somewhere. And I was prowling around the house trying to find... It was just like the hail hit in the guttering. But yeah, I thought we had a leak.
Blimey. Yeah. Well, thank God you didn't.
Yeah, thank God.
So for today's episode, we are going to review Friday the 13th Part 2.
Part 2.
So, of course, major spoilers for anybody listening who hasn't seen the film. If you want to go in blind, turn this off, go see the film, and then come back.
Yeah, I mean, the film is however many years old now.
It came out in 1981.
Yeah, so you've had time.
Yeah, plenty of time. We've just finished watching the film.
Yes, we have.
Initial thoughts?
You're diving in with a loaded question straight off the bat. Okay. If we're comparing it to the first, I don't think it's that much of an improvement.
Okay.
I think it's very samey. There's a few bits that are better, marginally, comparatively to the first one. But the improvement isn't all that great, and it does seem to tread a lot of the same ground.
Yeah.
As the first one. I also have an issue with the pacing of it, which I think we'll understand more as we talk about it and kind of go through things.
Yeah.
But if we're sticking with the comparison of the first part, the deaths are spread out quite, not evenly, because you can't have them like too early on. You need to set up the tension and everything. I understand that.
Yeah.
But there'd be a death and then there'd be some more character scenes and then another death and then some more character scenes. Whereas this one seems very intent on getting the deaths all done very, very quickly, very, very rapidly, all back to back, which I found quite jarring, which we'll explain as we go. I imagine. What about yourself? How do you feel about it?
So I thought it was slightly better than the first one, not by much.
Yeah.
Because, it is pretty much the same. Even though, obviously, it's a slightly different story and it is a continuation, it follows that same formula of a killer going around. We see from the killer's point of view, killer kills a bunch of teenagers who are having and doing things they probably shouldn't be doing, and then a pretty lackluster ending.
It kind of just stops very abruptly, I felt.
Yeah.
And you say, it follows a formula, and it does follow a formula, and it follows that formula very, very well. It just so happens to be a formula we've already seen in the first film and in many others.
Yeah.
There's not a lot that really sets this one apart, and I think that's probably my main gripe. To me, a sequel should build upon what came before, and it does in some ways. It sort of establishes the lore of Jason, but aside from that, it doesn't really build upon the groundwork left by the first one. If we're diving straight in, the film opens with a kind of recap of the first one. Right? And we see the girl who survived the first one. I forget her name. I think we just referred to her as the final girl.
The final girl.
Which, in this instance, doesn't make sense because she's the first girl in this one.
Yeah.
But, we see her at the start and we get this little previously on Friday the 13th, which I thought was quite amusing. That did go on for a bit too long.
It did.
I felt. And, we kind of catch up with her for a moment where, she's taken some time away from her parents. She wants to be on her own. And then she's kidnapped, presumably by Jason.
Yeah. Wait, does she get kidnapped?
Or something. She's not injected or...
He stabs her in the head with something.
Oh, well, she did.
She did.
But then she's never mentioned again. They reference her briefly when the camp counselors are talking about Jason, but...
Oh, God, we'll get on that in a minute.
And so the connection to the first one is really loose.
Very.
Like, really loose. Like, they could have done so much. They could have brought, the girl from the last one back as the sort of law dump character if they needed to, or something like that. But they genuinely did nothing with her.
She could have gone there to, like, warn them, tell them to leave, but no, for some reason they decided to kill her off at the beginning.
Yeah, and so I was kind of disappointed by the fact that it didn't really build all that much on what came before.
No. I think the opening, obviously, see, I can't say what it was like back then because we weren't even alive back then. But the build up to it was very weird. So there was the whole recap of the first one, which did go on for way too long. I don't even think there should have been a recap.
No,
if you want a recap, watch the first film.
One. Yeah, presumably people who care about what happened before will have already watched the first one. Yeah. And if they don't, you can kind of watch this in isolation. Still, it still stands on its own 2 feet as its own film. You just kind of don't get some of the lore in the same way that someone who's watched the first one would.
Yeah, and then there's the little kid, isn't there?
Yeah, that bemused me.
He's like skipping through rain. Yeah, and he's like singing a little song to himself.
Yeah, singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider.
Yeah. His man was like, Jimmy, I can't remember what she says. Come on home now, it's dinner time.
Yeah.
And then literally the second that he leaves the frame, Jason walks into front. Like, did the kid not see him?
Yeah.
He just suddenly just shows up.
That's the thing throughout the entire film, though, where there's points where it's like, how is nobody seeing him? How? Like, this is skipping forward a little bit, but there's one point before any of the counselors have died, they're all just chilling in the cabin, some of them are playing chess or whatever.
Yeah.
One of them's dancing with the dog, Muffin. And
he's
right by the window. Right by it. And all he has to do is glance a little bit further to the right.
Yeah.
And you'll see this figure. But no. And there are so many instances like that where I'm like, I don't get, why can nobody see him?
Because the characters are stupid.
Yeah.
And then as soon as Jason walks into frame and he's walking towards this house where the final girl is in, she's asleep, isn't she? And she's having a dream of everything that's happening in the first one.
Yeah.
And she's just there going, no.
Yeah, God, it's so bad. Acting.
Acting at its finest.
It feels like in that moment she was given no direction.
No.
At all. Didn't land very well. And again, I stress the point, the recap was unnecessary, and to be honest, so was kind of the inclusion of her in the first place. I don't think she was necessary to anything.
Unless they had her, again, to come back to warn these other if she was going to play a big part in the story, then yeah. But if you're just going to kill her off at the beginning, what's the point?
Yeah. I mean, maybe there was some production issue behind it, or there's something to do with how they actually made it, where there was a rewrite of some kind. I don't know. It just seems like a bit of a waste.
Yeah. She gets a phone call, doesn't she? Well, at first she's on the phone with her mum, and she's saying to her like, I just need to find myself, and this is the best way I need to do it. I know you and Dad are worried, but come on. And then she hangs up, and then the phone rings again, and she's like, Mom, I told you. And it's like you can hear breathing on the phone. He's like, hello? Who is this? And I wrote down, Jason knows how to make a phone call?
Well, that's a good point. Like, I was gonna say, well, of course he does, but does he? If we're following the lore of the first one, he's lived in a lake for his adolescence.
Yeah. And as we later find out, according to one of the main characters, he never went to school. How the does she know that? I don't know.
That again, that's something that happens a lot. That you pointed out mostly throughout the entire run. Is like there are points where characters know things they have absolutely no business knowing.
Yeah.
But then again, all these discussions about the Jason lore and who is he, or does he even exist, and is he just a legend, a myth, is whatever. It doesn't actually factor into the actual story.
No.
At all.
No.
There's no mystery about who is Jason, why is he the way that he... It doesn't... It's not part of the plot at all.
No.
So therefore, all this discussion that they have no right knowing is totally irrelevant.
Yeah, it's pointless, because it's just them randomly spitting out fact. They're just blurting out exposition.
Yeah. Just in case you didn't see the first one. We're having a discussion about this man called Jason, and we want to see if he's real. Now, there's a legend that he's gone round the lake and he kills specifically camp counselors for some reason.
There's no reason as to why we're having this conversation, but it, we just want to have it anyway.
Yeah. And for some reason, we've just gone to a bar to have this discussion.
Yeah, the final girl at the beginning, after the call, she's like walking around the house because like strange things are happening. And there's these drawings of a person, but they look like members from the band Kiss.
Yeah, I remember you pointed that out. I don't think I clocked them. I wonder if it's supposed to be like some sort of hint towards her healing from the trauma.
Probably.
You know, because you get, I don't know if it's an actual thing in psychology, but in psychology on television and in films,
yeah,
a lot of the time they're like, we want you to draw what you saw or what you felt, and and then they interpret things from the drawings. I don't know if that's a common practice in reality.
I don't know, but in terms of this particular film, it played nothing.
Yeah.
It had no reason being
totally
there.
irrelevant. And also, I don't recall Jason or his mum looking like a member from Kiss.
It was so random. And then, Jason goes up from behind her and stabs her I think he stabs her in the head with a screwdriver. And then, for some reason, after he kills her, the kettle is on the stove.
Yeah.
And it's boiling. And he decides to grab it and then take it off the stove.
Yeah.
And then the title comes in.
And let it boil over, love.
He's cautious.
Well, maybe he was just making a brew. And the water was boiled. He's like, right, make some tea.
He just came across it. He's like, I've just killed someone. Oh, the kettle's boiled.
Thanks, love. It's like booting the dead corpse.
So in the first one, in our review of the first one, we were talking about the old man and how we were like, we never found out what happened to him.
Yeah, we did. And
he is in this one.
He's in it. And that, you know what we're saying? The counsellors have no right knowing about all these things. How does the old man know?
Yeah, that's still never explained.
And he just creeps around the town. Creeps around the town. Creeps around the town going, we're doomed, we're doomed. How are we doomed? Yeah. I mean, you're only doomed if you go to this camp and you sort of hang about by the lake. If you steer clear of that, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, it's like he goes up to those teenagers at the phone box. He's going, I told them, but they didn't listen to me. You're doomed. You're all doomed.
Yeah, I did like that scene actually takes place at the gas station from the first one, from the introduction of the first one.
Yeah.
Continuity on point. I did actually appreciate that. Again, continuity means nothing if you're not going to do anything with it.
Yeah.
But, I did appreciate that little thing at the beginning there.
Yeah. So speaking of these teenagers that the old man speaks to, we're basically introduced to the characters in the movie who are going to get killed off.
Yes.
And, very similar to the first one. It's just teenagers who are dating each other, they're into each other, and they just want to go away and have and they get in a car and they're driving to the camp, and it's while they're talking. I can't even remember what they were talking about, but they're talking about stuff, and every now and then they laugh.
Yes.
But the laughs are so fake.
Yeah, very Tommy Wiseau.
I literally wrote down they sound like Tommy Wiseau from The Room. It's like they'll talk about something, and then the girl, for instance, she'll go, oh, what a story, Mark.
Yeah, I don't get why that's a common thing in films, all that kind of fake laughter.
Yeah. It's like, all is well. Nothing bad will happen to us.
Yeah. Which obviously means something bad is going to happen to them. Yeah. You also skip over a thing there. Before they're driving off, one of the guys who's with them, when they pull up, pulls a prank and gets someone to tow the truck.
Oh yeah, that was weird.
Which I don't get. And the guy's chasing after the truck. How is he keeping pace with it?
Yeah, it's like he has a superpower.
Yeah, the Flash. Why didn't he use his powers to stop Jason?
Because he was busy having punani.
And playing his harmonica.
We'll get to that in a bit. I wrote down exposition because it's when, the group leader, he's, basically reading out what's going to happen over the course of however long they're going to stay there. And then he looks at each camp member and he's like, again, I can't remember any of their names. He's like, oh Johnny, you were a camp counselor 3 years ago, right? And it's just, he's just spitting facts about each person. I'm just sat there like, exposition.
He's the exposition fairy. He's got his little bag of exposition dust. It's got some for you, sprinkle on some for you, some for you, but not you. Because he didn't go through everybody.
No, that's true, he didn't.
There was like 2 people he left out.
Yeah. He's like, you guys aren't important.
That kind of introductory scene, I wrote a few notes.
Okay.
So I'm just going to go through these because they're not that, essential to the plot.
Okay.
I put, bet the guy in the wheelchair dies first. I was wrong.
Yeah.
That was me just taking a little guess at something there. Then there was the slingshot to the ass for the obligatory ass shot.
Oh, yeah.
What was the relevance of that other than getting an ass on the camera?
That guy, the guy who had the slingshot is this film's Ned.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pervy, bit creepy, just wants to have sex.
Yeah. I suppose...
You could say he just thinks about kissing women.
I forgot about that. I feel like this little moment of him like slingshotting this girl's ass, it's to set up that dynamic, I guess.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I can think it's doing. It's like, he's a bit of a pervy, weird guy, likes playing some pranks, he's a bit obnoxious.
Yeah.
And the girl seems kind of into him, but she's like, just calm down, fuck off. That sort of dynamic. But there are so many other ways that you could establish that without having to just get a really close-up shot of this poor actress's behind. Like, I know it's a trope in horror movies, but come on.
Yeah, it was. There's a few moments in it where there's like an obligatory shot. There's an obligatory shot. We'll get to the other ones in a bit. This film's final girl then shows up.
Yes, in her car.
Yeah, and she's clearly late. And the leader of the group is her boyfriend.
Yes, Paul, the only person we can actually remember the name of.
The only person I remember. So Paul goes up to her and he's like, oh, why are you late? And she says, my car's sick. Does it have the f***ing flu? Like, what? What does that mean?
I wonder if it's like Noddy's car where it's slightly sentient and it's caught a cold.
Bertie goes to the doctor.
I also wrote after that moment, the car's sick, I just put foreshadowing.
Yeah. Sound like Jeff Goldblum then.
Jason.
They're driving away from him. Must go faster. And
then I also just ended this little scene with a note that said, bears are dangerous. No shit.
I wrote the same thing. I feel like that's stating the obvious. Because he's there and he's talking to all the other campers and he's like, it's something along the lines of, remember, bears are dangerous. Like if you and I were sat there, we'd be like, that should go without saying. Like,
remember, water is wet.
Remember, grass is blue. Okay, he's not well. We need to take him away.
Are you sick like the car?
Oh yeah, and then after that, I'm pretty sure he goes off with the final girl, with this final girl, and they go off and they're like talking to each other and whatnot. And then it fades, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. And then it fades back up, and all of a sudden they're sat around this campfire, and out of nowhere, he starts waffling about the legend of Jason.
Yeah. How does he know all this?
Yeah, and why? Why does he suddenly start spewing out all of this information about him? It's like, he's like, okay guys, remember, we need to be safe, alright? Bears are dangerous, alright? Oh god, Cindy, why are you late? Oh, your car's sick? Oh, alright, I guess I can forgive that, come on. Guys, I'm gonna tell you about the legend of Jason. It just comes so out of left field.
Yeah. And you pointed out, quite rightly, if they know they're quite close to the site of a f***ing massacre, right, why are they there?
Yeah! It's like, I mean, this speech about him telling the story of Jason goes on for, a good 5 minutes? And, he keeps making these weird faces while he's telling it, he's really getting into it. And he's like, oh, Jason's out there for blood. He's gonna get us. And it's just like, again, if you and I were there, we'd be like, gee, thanks for bringing us to this area.
I'm like, does anybody have a car that isn't sick so we can go home? I also think in that little sort of Jason exposition dump, they mention that the events of that were 5 years ago. It does not feel like 5 years has passed.
No.
And again, is that time jump significant?
It doesn't play a part in it at all.
No.
It's just there for exposition.
Yeah. I think they say 5 years because, let's say a year after a massacre of that kind, there's no way that police or anybody would be like, yeah, that's a good idea, go camp there.
Yeah.
So I feel like they just said 5 years because it just felt like it was enough time when it elapsed to justify just doing it in the same place again.
Yeah. And as well, like they're saying, I'm going to tell you about the legend of Jason. And then he like spurts out information about his mum and like she was killing people that only happened 5 years before. By that point, it wouldn't be a legend.
No.
If it was a legend, first of all, there would be no proof of it actually existing.
Yeah, there needs to be some mystery behind it.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not a legend, it's crime.
Yeah, if they know it to be true. Oh, yeah, it was just so random.
Well, there'd be a police report. People would be aware of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how do you explain all the people that died in the first one?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, then after that, there's I'm just going to call him Ned 2.
Ned 2.
Ned 2, similar to the first one, talks to a dog called Muffin.
Yes.
And says, what does he say? It's something like, what do you think I should do? And like starts dancing with Muffin. I'm like, what is it with these movies? And the filmmaker's trying to build a potential relationship.
She's just talking to I wouldn't go that far.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
But they talk to the dogs as though they have some human level knowledge. Like in the first one, was she asking the dog for directions or something?
No, she went, do you speak English?
Do you speak English? It's like, well, yes, I went to Oxford. And like, you know, in this case, you know, he's like, what should I do? And it's like, you should go home. There's a serial killer.
You should go to a mental institute. I'm not actually talking right now, yet for some reason, you think I am. Oh god, I've written this down right, but I cannot remember which character says this or when they say it. But I just wrote down, hello? Who's there?
Oh, right.
And next to it, I just put, stupid thing to say.
Yeah, this is a moment, I think it's the final girl, and she goes off on her own to get changed or something, and then there's like a rattling outside, and she goes out.
It's not the final girl, it's the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And in that sequence, there's some more obligatory
Yeah, obligatory shot, obligatory shot, a shot of her wearing nothing but a jumper and knickers, again, sexualizing.
Yeah. And she goes outside to see who's there, which they seem to do quite routinely. They'll just be in, you know, their underwear, and then there'll be a rattling outside, and they'll just casually stroll out.
Yeah, it's again, I can imagine the actors being like, director, the weather's really cold and it's raining, and I'm wearing nothing but my sweater and knickers. Can I please have some kind of coat or put some clothes on? No, we need this shot for the movie. Now get ready.
So I understand, like, it's set in summer and it's, you know, it's by a lake and it's out in the wilderness and there's not many people around. But, you know, you don't know most of these people, especially if they've all worked at different camps and this is the first time that they're all meeting. You don't know these people.
Yeah.
Why would you feel comfortable enough to just be roaming around with all on?
Yeah.
I don't get that. I don't understand it.
Is that Jane? Jane? What are you wearing? Put some clothes on. Yeah. Have some self-respect.
Why was it Jane?
I don't know, I just gave her a random name.
Sometimes your name choices for things really just are beautiful.
Oh yeah, I then put, oh yeah, so I believe it's while she's inside, and she's like, because she knows that she's getting ready to have sex with the disabled Bruce Campbell. We'll get on him in a minute. The old man's watching her from outside.
Yes.
And he's leaning against a tree, and then all of a sudden, Jason comes from behind, has like a wire or rope or something, strangles the old man, and kills him. So the old man actually dies.
So it turns out he was doomed. Not everybody, well, everyone else kind of was as well. But he was also doomed.
He didn't follow his own advice.
But why did he go?
Exactly. He's telling everyone else not to go. Why the fuck's he there?
Yeah, because we saw him, I think it was around the time where they were doing the exposition dump of like, oh, you're from this camp, you're from this camp.
Yeah.
There's a moment where the final girl comes in on a car. She passes the old man riding a bike to the camp.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
But why is he going there? What purpose would it serve?
I think he's just there to perv. Because whenever you see him, he's always watching the women.
Maybe we're missing a line of dialogue. He's like, you'll be doomed if you go there, but you'll be safe if you take all your clothes off.
An old friend of his sees him. Bob? Bob, snap out. I'm really sorry about this. Bob he's pretty much lost all of his memory. Come on, Bob, we're taking you back to the old people's home.
He's got dementia.
Oh, okay, so there's the other couple who... So I'm going to be jumping a bit ahead of here. But so there's a couple where there's a woman who, for some reason, she has this weird obsession with Camp Crystal Lake. Like, she really wants to go. Yeah. And then you have a boyfriend who is a mixture, in terms of looks, he's a mixture of Kevin Bacon and Austin Butler. So I cannot remember his character's name. So from now on, I'm just going to call him Austin Bacon.
Austin Bacon.
So the girl keeps saying to Austin Bacon, come on, Austin, like, I want to go to the Camp Crystal Lake. I want to go to Camp Blood. I really want to go. Come on, I'm serious. And he's like, no, like, we're not allowed. Come on, I just want to go for a swim. No, I want to go. So they eventually go, and they get caught by a police officer, or at first, a close-up shot of a shoe. And then... And then, like, the police officer catches them and then tells them off and, like, makes sure they don't do it again. And it's the way the girl's like, we're sorry, sir, we won't do it again. It was your f***ing fault, you silly bitch.
Yeah.
Your boyfriend kept telling you.
I like this little dialogue exchange as well, where the cop's like to Paul, he's like, are you not going to reprimand them? And
yeah.
He turns to, is it the final girl, he turns to and goes, make sure they don't get a second at dessert tonight. Oh no! They can't get a second helping of ice cream. Oh dear.
No! That's the only reason I came here!
It's mint choc chip. I also, around this point, I've written a note that I do actually kind of appreciate the fact that, I mean, I appreciated it at first, and I think as the film goes on, I appreciated it less and less.
Right.
That they kind of dive straight in with the creepy stuff. By this point in the film, we've seen a fair bit of Jason, which is sort of counter to the first film where, with the exception of those few little POV shots in the bushes or whatever, we don't see a lot of Mrs. Voorhees.
It's only in flashback where we see her.
I mean in the first one.
Oh, the first one. Oh, yeah.
You know, we only kind of see her POV and we see it really, really sparingly. Whereas in this one, it kind of jumps straight in. It doesn't hold your hand. It's kind of like, yeah, you should know what to expect and we're going to go all in on this.
Yeah.
But then I think that does upset the pacing because you've kind of skipped over the part where you're building tension by not showing us something.
Yeah.
You know, the whole idea of not seeing something makes it more scary. So while I did appreciate it at first, that we weren't kind of rehashing the same tension build-up that we've already seen.
Yeah.
I think it did upset the pacing because everything happens a bit too quickly.
So after the whole situation with the couple going to Camp Crystal Lake and the cop tells them off, he's then going for a drive. And while he's driving down this road, it suddenly cuts to a shot of Jason jumping into these bushes, but halfway across the road.
Yeah.
So it's all you said it brilliantly. It's like he was already standing in the middle of the road, saw the cop, and went, "Oh shit!" and then just jumped in the bushes.
Well, the only other explanation is he's darted across the road from one side to the other. But in that instance, would he have not looked to see if there was a car approaching before he darted across? So the only explanation must be he was just standing there. And the thing is, he only moves when the car's maybe about, I don't know, 10 feet at the most away from him. Maybe it's a little more than 10 feet. But, you know, at this point, he can quite clearly see it's a cop car, and the cop can clearly see that's a weird-looking dude just standing in the middle of the road. Like, why did he not duck for cover sooner once he kind of saw the car in the distance?
Yeah.
That doesn't track.
I mean, I suppose you could try to justify it by saying that Jason is clearly mentally challenged. However, I do not think that's what the writers were thinking when they wrote the script.
No, absolutely not.
They just did it as a jump scare.
Yeah. And I get, you know, the distance between Jason and the car is really irrelevant, and they probably just did it that way for the sake of ease of filming. But it just makes that one shot of him darting into the bushes so jarring. Yeah. And let's be honest, really funny.
It is really funny. And then there's a whole chase sequence with the cop and Jason. Now, the cop is running.
Yeah.
Like he's running pretty full pelt. And then whenever it cuts back to Jason, he's just walking.
Yeah.
But there's always a distance between them. So is Jason just the fastest walker alive?
Now, you see, Jason can teleport.
See, you say that, right? I know you're saying that as a joke. You can do that in the game.
But what in the Friday the 13th game,
yes.
Jason, if you're playing as Jason...
Yes, you can teleport.
It was there in the lore all along.
Well, I suppose it becomes like a long-running joke throughout all of the movies that out of nowhere Jason will just appear, or he'll just be walking and yet somehow he manages to catch up to you if you're either running or driving in a car.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just found that really funny. And then the cop, he's sort of looking around, and then Jason appears behind him with holding a hammer, and he lodges the back of the hammer in the back of his head, which was a very cool effect.
Yeah, before the death, he does stop at a puddle.
Oh, that's right.
Right. This really wound me up. So, having seen the rest of the film, I understand that it's almost like it's a landmark to signify, oh, you're almost at Jason's cabin.
Yeah.
Right? Because every time someone's either going to or leaving from Jason's cabin, they always pass by this puddle. But of all the landmarks they could have used a tree or a bush or a rock. No, they used a fucking puddle. Why? I don't get it.
And it cuts back to that puddle a lot.
Yeah, and the shots linger on it for way too long. You're like, what's the significance of this? You're like in a film, if you want to show that an object is of importance, you can insert shots that linger a bit too long to kind of signify to the audience, oh, this object is going to be important.
Yeah.
So they keep cutting back to this puddle, and the entire way through, I'm like, how does this factor into events?
Right. If you're thinking that while watching a Friday the 13th movie, you're just wasting your own time.
Yep, I absolutely did. I will discover the lore of the puddle at some point. I will find out its significance.
A bit later on, there's another character. It's the character who owns the dog Muffin. And all the other campers, they're like, some are staying at the camp and some others are going out to go for drinks. And this one girl's like, I'm going to go for a walk in the woods at night.
These people never learn.
And I wrote down, anyone with common sense would not go for a walk in the woods at night.
Yeah, but if people had common sense in these things, you wouldn't have a film.
I was literally going to say that. It's like, why are they doing this? Because it says so in the script.
I'm going to go juggle some knives.
In the woods at night. I hope nothing bad happens to me. And I believe it's while she's in the woods. Is this when she goes skinny dipping?
Yeah, more obligatory.
Yeah, but way more than that. She gets full on naked. You see her breasts, you see her backside, you see a little bit of her front side. She goes skinny dipping, and then she comes out and she hears a noise and she's like, Muffin?
It's obviously the dog.
Yeah.
Muffin!
I wrote down Muffin is the new Bill. Bill! But it turns out it's her boyfriend, Ned 2.
Ned 2.
Who is...
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. He's like stealing her clothes. He's like, oh, come on. You gotta run for it. Come on. He's like, oh, Ned 2, come on. And he eventually falls into a trap. Rope goes around his ankles and he gets hung upside down.
Yeah, which... That actually caught me off guard. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
I like how this little moment building up to him getting in the trap is intercut with the other campers back at the cabin as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the few times, like you say, like a lot of the time the deaths or like the sort of scary moments all happen in rapid succession. And this was one of the few times where it actually let the moment breathe. So something happens where it puts a character in peril and then it cuts away and we see something else. But then we're left wondering, what's happening to this guy? And then it cuts back. It's the only time I think it actually did that.
I think it's at this point where I suppose you could say like the really fun part of the movie starts. Because you've got the Ned 2 character who's hung upside down and the girl says that she's going to get a knife and she's going to cut him down. She's like, just wait here, jokingly saying it because obviously he can't go anywhere. And then eventually Jason comes up from behind him with the machete and slices his throat. And then it cuts back to the other campers at the camp, building up what they want to do. Like they want to fall around and whatnot. Yeah. It's clearly building up their death scenes.
Yeah. There's some janky dialogue in those scenes, but I will circle back to that.
I mean, there's janky dialogue throughout the entire film.
No, but I think there's some real zingers in this little chunk of the film.
So, yeah, the girl, she runs, I'm assuming she runs to like a different part of the cabin and she's trying to find the knife to cut him down and she turns the light on, the bulb goes out, obviously. And then she's facing away from the camera and she lowers down out of frame and then all of a sudden she rises back up into frame looking right into the camera.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's so jarring. It feels so out of place. Do you know what it reminds me of? And it took me a second to realise what it was it reminded me of. You know on like kids' TV, like on CBeebies, you know, like characters like Mr. Tumble or like, you remember, like Mr. Maker, and how they would just pop into frame and like be like, you know, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like they clearly just bob down behind a desk and then someone's called action and the guy like, hey! And that's exactly what it reminded me of.
I couldn't help but think, as soon as she did it, the thought in my head was just...
like she's been pumped up by a slide whistle.
It's so silly. But she finds the knife and she walks out and she's wearing a top, but she's clearly not wearing a bra. And her breasts, she's walking at quite a fast pace. And so her breasts are, you know, they are wobbling up and down quite vigorously. And for some reason, they kept the shot lingering.
Yeah.
To the point where she walks into the camera. Her chest walks into the camera. Yeah. And I just thought, that was a weird shot.
Maybe that was just a setup by the camera. It was like, oh no, you fell. Oh no, you boobs. Oh no.
The director's like, oh, Chelsea, I said don't walk into the camera. We're going to have to do it again, guys. All right. Okay, can we just spray a bit more water on Chelsea's shirt? Okay, great. And action. Steve, why do you have a boner?
How many times do you reckon they did that take? Yeah, I don't like how... It's not just Friday the 13th that does
Oh,
this.
no, there's tons.
There's so many horror films that linger. You know the concept of the male gaze? I'd say probably 99% of horror films absolutely use that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that there aren't times where it does work. There are times where it does work if it's right for a character.
Yeah.
If it establishes something in a relationship, and if it's a character, you know, doing those things and acting that way, and sort of being a bit pervy, a bit creepy, if that's the kind of relationship you want to convey or something, then it makes sense. But when it is just how the shot is framed, it just makes me feel icky.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Just watching it. I don't know if you get the same thing.
No,
it just feels so ick.
I mean, yeah, there are definitely movies I've watched where there are certain scenes where women are being... men too. You know, women and men are being sexualized in a very odd way where it's not needed.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. It does happen with guys as well.
Yeah.
But in the horror movie sense, it is, let's be honest, it is...
Oh, yeah. It's more with women,
that are sort of objectified that way. And, you know, you could make the argument it's a product of its time, but...
See, I feel like when people say that, it's almost like they're trying to justify...
Yeah, it's passing off an excuse.
Yeah, there shouldn't really be an excuse for it.
Yeah. And it seemed to happen more in this one than it did the first one.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. So we then cut to a scene where the final girl, Paul, and some of the other characters are at the bar having a drink. And again, they're just spurting out facts about Jason and his mum. And it's just like, how do you know all of this? Yeah, this is so confusing.
They have no business knowing half the shit that they do.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And so because of that, I found it really difficult to immerse myself into the story.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt the same. It didn't. If they discover these things as they go,
that's more believable.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like the inclusion of the final girl from the first film might have been interesting if they were going to use her at all.
It would have made so much more sense.
She can then deliver that exposition. They're picking up clues and then they're finally kind of piecing it all together. Yeah. And then they meet her.
She could be a tool. The tool that she would be the information board.
Yeah, exactly.
And it would make sense because she's from the first one and she's already experienced all of this. Whilst if you're going to have characters who we've never seen before and who have no reason to know all of this be those information boards, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And another thing that got me about this scene in particular, so far, at the times where they have discussed Jason, they've talked about it as fact. Like, this did happen. Yeah. Something happened. We don't know where Jason is or, like, what happened to this girl, but this happened. It definitely happened and Jason exists. Or you know, Mrs. Voorhees, or, the drowning happened. And Jason was in the lake, blah, blah, blah. They talk about it as fact. And then they are sat in the bar and then they start doubting his existence in its entirety. I can't remember what the line of dialogue is, but they're like, I wonder if he really is out there. And it's like, no, but you were talking about it as though he was before.
Yeah. And it's like the way they were discussing it, it sounded like they were like having a review of the first film like we do.
Yeah, which... They really did feel like they were critiquing the first one, right? Yeah. And this is sort of reinforced by, in an earlier scene when they first start talking about Jason around the campfire, when Paul and the final girl walk away, Paul's like, oh, what did you think, like, of the story? And she says, Act 2 needs work.
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying.
Yeah. So it does feel like the filmmakers and the writers and what have you are sort of poking fun at the first one, a bit tongue-in-cheek. But I feel like that only lands if your film that you're currently writing
is better than the first one. Because, I completely agree. To put like a very subtle joke in your script that makes it like, oh yeah, we're self-aware, that doesn't make it a better script. Because if you're going to make a joke to say, oh, Act 2 needs work, then you need to make sure that your Act 2 is good.
Yeah, exactly.
If your Act 2 is bad and you have a character and it's saying, oh, Act 2 needs work, it doesn't make it funny.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, oh, it's fine. They know their second act is shit. It's like, no, like if it's shit, you're going to piss off the audience one way or another. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It just like if you're gonna poke fun, maybe do better.
Yeah, I wrote down the line that the girl says to the disabled Bruce Campbell. Sorry, right. There's a character in this film.
You're just saying it with no context.
Yeah, there's a character in this film who's in a wheelchair, and he is near enough a spitting image of a young Bruce Campbell. Again, for anyone who doesn't know, if you don't know who Bruce Campbell is, just Google him. You'll know who he is. He's very prevalent in the horror scene. But I wrote down a line that she says to him. Because she asks him, Bruce, his name's not Bruce, but I just refer to him as Bruce Campbell. Disabled Bruce Campbell? How did you get into a wheelchair? He goes, I was hit by a car. My legs are paralyzed. And she goes, is it permanent?
No, it'll only last 18 minutes.
I think he says something along the lines of like, no, I'll walk one day. I won't let it stop me. And she's like, does everything else still work?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, God.
Yeah. I don't like how they handle the dialogue towards the wheelchair. They don't do anything particularly clever or novel with the idea of having a character in a wheelchair. It's not, I mean, obviously, because it's from the 80s, it's not exactly representative either.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it was a necessary
Again,
inclusion.
it's not needed.
I feel like the only reason they thought, oh, that might be nice, it's like they thought of the death first and then built the character backwards from there.
I guarantee you that's what they did.
That's how it comes across. But then it just means in a script that, let's be honest, has some shaky dialogue to begin with, when you're addressing someone with a disability, some of it comes across really wrong. There's a previous note I have, let me find it, there we go. So at the point where there's some of the campers that go to that bar and then go and talk about Jason, and then there's some that stay and start kind of getting picked off one by one.
Yeah.
And when they're sort of deciding who's going, who's staying, Paul, I think, is the guy who says something about like he's glad the guy in the wheelchair isn't coming because, this is the line, nothing spoils a party more than a drunk kid in a wheelchair. What does he mean by that? What does that mean?
It's just mean.
Yeah, it is just really, really harsh. And I don't know if they're trying to convey something about Paul's character and if he's got some kind of prejudice or if he is just that kind of harsh. But the idea, so far, they've kind of set Paul up to kind of be this, not like amazing, but sort of more heroic, sort of positive aligned character.
Yeah.
So it was really, that's why I kind of twigged it, something really jarring, that this character's saying it, and not only is the line really, really bad, but also it shouldn't be him saying it.
No.
It should have been like one of the other guy who gets caught in the rope. Yeah.
Ned too.
Yeah, that I would understand. It would make sense coming out of his mouth because he's probably more the obnoxious character. I don't know. That line just did not sit right with me at all.
Yeah. So after that, when her and him are like flirting, and she's like, "Oh, does everything else still work?" Like they're clearly wanting to, get it on. It then cuts to Austin Bacon with his girlfriend, also getting ready to have sex. And again, for whatever reason, he's still wearing his hat.
Yes.
And he's playing the harmonica.
Do you not do your pre-sex harmonica?
It's a tradition in these parts.
Honestly, mate, if I don't play the harmonica before sex, I can't even get it up.
Again, such a random thing. I don't know if he thought playing the harmonica was like going to help turn her on or...
Yeah. I usually play Oh Susanna. The thing is, if he was like sort of idly playing the harmonica and then they started having sex, that would make sense. But they deliberately left the room in the scene previous to that one with the intention of having sex, and he's just like, oh, f*** it, I'm just going to blast out a tune.
Again, it makes no sense. And then again, you got Jason watching them from outside, and I just wrote down Jason's a pervert.
He's a proper pervert.
He is a pervert. I think it's because he's never experienced it himself, what it's like to be with a woman.
You're adding more lore to Jason.
I don't know why. Like, I don't think this films really deserve it, but, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. And then the girl who wants to have sex with disabled Bruce Campbell. There's a bit where she goes to a car, and again, she's wearing nothing but the jumper and a pair of knickers, and she opens the car door and she bends down, and then there's the shot of her bent over, and we're just looking at her ass, and it's meant to be a POV. I bet you anything the director's like, no, it's a POV shot, Chelsea, where this is the shot of the killer coming towards you, and as he goes, and action. That's right, it's getting closer. Getting closer. That's nice.
I immediately, because she lingers sort of bent in the car too long, and obviously it was directed that way.
Yeah.
She spends ages, and like if she was looking for something in the car, right, she'd probably get inside, but she just kind of like stands there sort of bent to give the camera the money shot, obviously.
Yeah.
And my brain got that like, step bro, I'm stuck.
Oh, Jason. Oh, I can't get out. Are you going to kill me with your massive shaft?
Is that just the machete in your pocket, or are you just pleased to see me?
Jason's response?
It's his noise. Cut.
Oh, and another really cool effect, disabled Bruce Campbell. He's sat outside the cabin, it's raining, there's a bad storm, and he's like, I can't remember her name, he's like, Chelsea, are you there? And then all of a sudden, Jason whacks the machete into his face.
Yeah, it goes in with some force.
Yeah, and then he like wheels backwards, and he's making the noise like, "Ugh!" And he goes like, he falls down this very high flight of stairs.
Yeah.
Very cool effect.
Yeah, like, obviously done practically, looks really convincing, looks really good.
Yeah.
And then the sort of dramatic rise of that, of him going back down the stairs, is cool. Like, it is a really cool death, but it obviously, like I say, they made this character, they thought of the death first and then built around it.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of the deaths, so far we haven't really spoken about the actual sort of practicality of them so far. Do you want to touch on that briefly?
Yeah.
Do you think the practical effects are an improvement on the first?
I think they look the same.
I'd said that too.
There's not really anything in this one that they do differently compared to the first one. If anything, I think the first one is slightly gorier.
Yeah.
There's a bit more blood in the first one.
Yeah. It seems like they tried to be more novel. You know, you've got obviously the death of disabled Bruce Campbell. You've got the guy who gets caught up in the rope, and you know, they're trying to do different things. But then when it kind of comes down to it, in the moments where Jason's getting a bit more frantic and he's killing a bit more rapidly, he's just stabbing.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of relatively the same. And I genuinely don't think even disabled Bruce Campbell's death doesn't top Kevin Bacon's from the first.
Yeah.
Where the knife comes through the mattress from the bottom.
Yeah, through his neck.
That is still the best death of the entire franchise so far.
Well, there is a similar death in this one, where Austin Bacon is having sex with his girlfriend, and the door slowly opens behind them, and the music goes... And like Jason comes in with a spear, which was the same weapon that Mrs. Voorhees used in the first one to kill Kevin Bacon. And then Jason stabs the spear through
both of them,
Austin Bacon and the girl.
Yeah.
Essentially pinning them. Again, it's fine. It's not like anything special. It's not anything that makes me go, wow, compared to some of the deaths in the later Friday the 13th movies that do get gorier and grittier.
Yeah.
It's just... We knew it was coming. It was like very simple, very quick.
Yeah, but when your entire premise hinges on killing these characters in novel and unique ways, you actually have to kill them in novel and unique ways.
Yeah.
And with the exception of disabled Bruce Campbell, they are all pretty samey.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, then after that, you've got the final girl who's like, I think she's with Paul, and she's like, no, Paul, I think there's something wrong. And she's trying to find other people. And I mean, for the next, 2 minutes or so? I mean, this could pretty much go on for a whole page of a screenplay. It's just her saying over and over again, Sandra? Jeff? Sandra? Jeff? Sandra? Jeff? My name's Jeff.
Yeah, that was annoying.
It was annoying.
It really was. I like the build up where the mask that Jason had on is like left on the stairs, and like the viewer knows more than the character in that moment.
Yeah.
But there's no tension built because they discover the body's straight away.
Yeah. Well, no, that was it, because the bodies are gone. Because when they go in, there's blood all over the bed. Oh, that's so funny. There's blood all over the bed, and their reactions aren't. They don't look very frightened. Like if I'd saw that, I'd be absolutely terrified.
Yeah.
But she's like, oh my God, Paul, what's going on, Paul? And then Paul's like, nothing.
Yeah.
Making him sound very suspicious.
That's exactly what a guilty person...
Muffin would say.
Oh my God, maybe it was Muffin all along.
That's the twist. And then, but she goes in the bedroom and she sees the blanket. No. It's that other character who walks in and sees the blanket on the bed. And she's like, Sandra? Jeff? And then Jason suddenly jumps out, revealing himself, and he's got the bag on his head.
Yeah, in the monster in the bed, like Little Red Riding Hood.
Yeah, and then she runs.
What an ugly face you have.
Jason's he just drops his hands. Well, that wasn't very nice. And then, she runs. Jason goes after her again, just walking and somehow keeping up with her.
Yeah.
And he corners her and he's got a knife and stabs her. Yeah. And her acting, I would say, was clearly Oscar worthy.
It honestly looks like she's just having a bit of a difficult poo. It's like...
Oh, okay. Yeah, there we go. Now, that's better.
Someone please make that edit.
Okay, yeah, I really, even though for the most part we're taking the piss out of this, with the exception of saying that there are some cool effects in this, another thing that I did like about this was the music.
Yeah, I think the score is an improvement, definitely.
I thought the music was very well used.
Like, they keep the iconic...
the classic theme, yeah.
But then it feels a little bit more, what's the term I'm going for? A little bit more, not orchestral, but,
But I'd say it was. Compared to the first one. I'm not saying there was a full-blown orchestra for this. Yeah. But compared to the first one, it is slightly more orchestral.
Yeah.
So no, I think that is the right word to use. And all throughout the film, the music is pretty on point. So I did appreciate that. Jason then smashes through the window trying to attack the protagonist, which I would say was the only decent jump scare in the film.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. When he jumps in the window. Oh, no, yeah. Sorry, I thought I was at the wrong point there. Is Paul still around for this sequence?
I believe he is. Because there's a moment where the film gets really dark. And not dark as in it gets violent. I mean... Literally, like the screen goes black.
Yeah, like I get they're filming outside, and there would have been limitations of the time and the location, but some of those shots are so poorly lit.
Yeah, you could barely see what was going. I think Paul fought him. I think Paul was fighting Jason.
Yeah. So I know this was indoors. So like sort of just after they discover the old man's body and that falls. I think it's just after this. Paul sort of dashes in. Well, they go into a room and finally somebody notices Jason.
Yeah.
And she says, Paul, oh my God, there's someone in the room. And Paul doesn't react. And she says it again. She's like, Paul, there's some guy in the room. And by the time he's actually turned around and gone like, what? It's too late. Jason's already coming at him.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually do appreciate the fact that finally someone saw him. But it wasn't used to great effect.
No. And then she's running away, and for some reason, during this running sequence, it randomly cuts to some shots of the moon.
Yeah, which
I thought was really weird.
Yeah, it was really jarring.
It's like she's running away from Jason. Dun 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 dun. Moon. Dun 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 dun. Moon.
Yeah.
Is Jason a werewolf now? Yeah. Like, what's going on?
Well, that shot in particular, for something like that to me in another film, would indicate a passage of time. Like a scene ends, you get a shot of the moon, and then a different scene.
Yeah.
So it conveys passage of time. So and they did it a couple times. So does that mean she was running from Jason for hours?
That is pretty much what the film's implying.
Yeah. And then there's the bit in the car.
Oh my God, we were dying with laughter.
We watched that 4 or 5 times.
We did.
We went back and rewatched.
She sat in the car and out of nowhere, Jason appears outside the car window. The music's going bum 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 bum, and then he just leaves, and the music just stops. It's like he's just there for a few seconds.
It's like, oh, this isn't my cab,
and then just leaves.
Uber for Jason.
he's just there, like, she's there going, I'm in Jason's car! Broom, broom! Get out my car!
It's like he just tried the door handle and it wouldn't work, and he's just like, oh, okay.
And that's it. She keeps running, doesn't she? And she finds what's clearly where Jason lives. And she goes inside and she's like, oh my God, please, can somebody help me? Oh my God, oh my God. And you can see Jason running towards her in the background.
Yeah, like
he looks like a bobblehead.
Yeah, like up on some knoll.
And then she opens this door and you see his mum's decapitated head surrounded by candles, and the head is rotting.
Yes. So finally some link to the first one.
Yeah.
Finally.
And then Jason comes in, tries attacking again. And then, and then a really weird bit. She suddenly starts speaking to Jason as his mum.
Yeah, she sees the jumper and she puts it on. Bear in mind, it's been on a corpse. And then she starts talking as Jason's mum.
I mean, how would she even know that would have worked?
I have no idea. The memories of these characters are so selective to whatever's convenient to the plot. So I think you just kind of have to roll with it at this point. It doesn't really make much difference.
No. The actress it's just there like, look, I'm not going to question anything in this script. I'm not going to say that the script doesn't make any sense. I'm just here for a paycheck. So it. If you want me to speak to Jason as his mum, I'll do it.
Yeah, like maybe the character, while she's been running away and she's figured out all her friends have been killed and stuff, she's figured, oh, this is Jason, this is the legend that everyone was talking about. It's this killer guy and something to do with his mum. And then she sees the remains and the jumper, and she's like, oh, that's Jason's mum. She could reasonably make that connection, but we as an audience don't get any of that because none of that is conveyed at all, in no dialogue, in no shots,
no visuals.
There is nothing to indicate that is what's happening. So even though might have been what they intended, it does not come across at all.
No, not at all. So we're just left confused.
Yeah, and then she just starts talking like Jason's mum.
Yeah, it's like, Jason, mother is talking to you. Kneel. Which I thought was a bit weird.
Yeah.
And then he gets on his knees and she's like raising, what is it, like an axe or something. And then he sees the head behind her and he's like, wait a minute, you're not my mom. And then, she stabs him. Oh, that's it. Paul comes in, tries to help. I think she stabs him because, again, the screen was so dark. And then you're kind of thinking, they think, oh my God, Jason's dead now. Obviously not. She removes the bag from his head and they're like horrified by how he looks. And then they go away. They go to another cabin and like he's hugging her and he's like, it's okay, Cindy, it's okay. And they hear a noise. And then there's I cannot believe they had it in this film. There's the close up of him very slowly putting his hand towards the door handle. I was like, oh my God, could you be any more cliche? And then he opens it. And it's Muffin! Muffin's alive! And they're like, and the music's all nice. And I instantly, what did I say?
The music's too nice.
Yep, I said, the music's too nice. They're lying to us. This is building towards something. And then Jason smashes through the window, looking like Sloth from the Goonies.
Yeah, he really did.
Grab it. I just wanted him to smash through going, hey, you guys! Yeah, and then, again, very confusingly, so it cuts to that, and then it suddenly cuts to the next morning, and she's being wheeled in an ambulance, being taken to hospital, which is going, where's Paul? Paul! Where's Paul? Will! And yet, you never see what happened to Paul.
No.
Which was weird. And then it just cuts to like a really long shot of Mrs. Voorhees' rotting head.
Yeah.
And then it ends.
Yeah, really abruptly.
Very abruptly.
Does, you probably know this better than me, does the next one kind of pick up where this one left off, or is it new setting, new place?
Cannot remember. I mean, I'd imagine it would still be on Camp Crystal Lake, and I do imagine there would be like another recap previously on Friday the 13th.
So we'll find that out next time when we review one of these, I imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It sort of sped run the ending. Really didn't like that. It's one of my issues with the pacing is there's not I think there's a couple of deaths sort of in Act 2.
Yeah.
Which needs work. But then the majority of the deaths take place in the space of about 15 minutes. And then the film ends.
Yeah.
There's no sort of debrief moment where the characters are coming down from anything, or I don't know. It is really abrupt, and that last 15 minutes just spared everything that the film should have been doing from the first instance.
Yeah.
I will give it some credit. There are some good good setups and payoffs, which didn't happen so much in the first one.
No.
So there's obviously the car that's sick, not starting, and then obviously when she runs to the car to try and escape Jason later, we obviously as an audience, the car's not going to start, we get it, and that helps the tension of that moment, even though that is completely undercut by how Jason just bops up in the car window and looks funny as But then, I forgot to mention this earlier, there's a bit, I think, when the campers are all kind of moving in, they're outside having a barbecue, and the main girl is cutting some firewood or something. And then she goes and she takes the chainsaw and puts it in a cabinet, and that shot lingers too long, and it's one of those instances where he's like, right, that's going to be significant. And I remember thinking, Chekhov's chainsaw. Is it Chekhov's chainsaw, Chekhov's gun?
Yeah.
And so when she, in the chase, that's intercut with the moon, in the chase, there's a bit where she goes into a cabin and hides under a bed, which there's a convenient rat to raise the tension, crawling over her and stuff. And she was like, oh my god, she's weighing herself.
Because for some reason, that's what I was more concerned about.
Yeah. But then, obviously, she runs, Jason finds her under the bed and she runs into the room where the cabinet is, and I thought chainsaw and then watched her whip this chainsaw out. So, set up and payoff. They did it a lot better than the first one.
I was expecting her to say groovy.
Groovy. But they don't do it enough, and they don't do it in a way that ties to the plot or to Jason and his lore, and it's not satisfying enough.
No, and I for me overall, while I don't even think it's better than the first one. I think it's on par.
Yeah, they're just equal.
Yeah, I think they're both just as bad as each other. Yeah, okay, there are some cool deaths in it. The effects are pretty decent. The music was good overall, and the lore on Jason, I suppose, is kind of okay, but it's still very confusing. A lot of it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And these characters who are just spurting out exposition makes it even more confusing. Because again, like as we discussed, how the hell do they even know anything about that? That being said, I still think this is a fun, over-the-top, silly horror movie that you can watch with your friends.
Yeah, we said the same thing about the first one. It's one of those things where it's exactly what it says on the tin.
Yes.
However, with that said, for me, if someone says, do you want to watch a Friday the 13th, what it says on the tin is killing and murder and stuff, but in novel and interesting ways.
Yeah.
That's what my brain would conjure. Right, and if we're going on that criteria, I actually think the first one probably does it maybe a little better. I don't know, because you do have the death where the guy's in the rope, and you've got disabled Bruce Campbell's death.
Yeah.
So maybe they are on par. I don't know, but I think, the setup and payoffs are better in this one. The music's a little better. But then I think I cared about the characters more in the first one. The final girl in particular. I think I cared about her more.
In this one, I didn't care about any of them.
Yeah. So I think, for everything that this one does wrong, the first one got right. And everything the first one got wrong, this one gets right. So they've corrected some things and then misstepped in other areas. So
it's like they took one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah. So they ended up kind of producing pretty much the same film over again.
Yeah, it's like I was saying, it's like they've just followed the same formula.
Yeah, and it's a formula that works, and like you say, says what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
But I don't know. With it again, I stress, with it being a sequel, I'd expect some build on what came before.
Yeah.
World building can count for a lot in these things.
Yeah.
And they didn't do a lot of world building at all.
No, they didn't. Hopefully, I mean, it's been so long since I've seen these movies, I've forgotten most of them. So hopefully, Friday the 13th Part 3 will maybe have some progress to it in terms of story and character. I don't have high hopes, but we shall see. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel.
You can follow us on Instagram at Ben and Joel Reviews.
You can also follow us on Twitter, or X as it's now referred to, at B_J_Reviews123. And we will see you next week.
Take care.
Take care, my loves.